if I could get this on a stamp, I would stamp this on practically every report that comes out of every transport paper ever written, because this is the solution to making trains go faster. And I say that with no flippancy whatsoever. And I think I've prepared. I think we may have already prepared a good example here, which is a little bit loaded, but you'll get the idea.
We have two nice images here. One of them, conveniently enough and interestingly enough, shows the former King's Cross station throat. More on that momentarily. The other is just a picture of a ruddy HST slamming along a fair old lick. And so, I shall narrate, and then you can interject whenever you like, Steve. So, the first example is basically say, 1 mile at 15 miles an hour takes 4 minutes, right? I'm saying this as if I've come up with these. No, Steve has come up with these. I'm just saying them, and I don't even know why I've decided to, but I am. 1 mile at 40 miles an hour takes 1.5 minutes. So that increase in speed from 15 to 40 miles an hour saves 2.5 minutes, right? If you're at full speed, so if you have here, we've got the HST going along, 20 miles at 100 miles an hour takes 12 minutes. 20 miles at 125 miles an hour takes 9.5 minutes, which again saves 2.5 minutes. So that's 20 miles of fairly, as we've just discussed, pretty massive infrastructure and associated operational ramification work, whereas just 1 mile of line speed improvement from only 15 to 40 miles an hour saves just the same amount of time. Pretty. And just to point out, it's very common to have lots of S&C, switches and crossings, and point work that is basically, so that station throat there, you can see the massive 15 mile an hour speed board in the middle of it. That was the traversing speed through King's Cross Throat, and actually I dare say quite a few drivers didn't dare go above 10 given the state of some of that point work before the renewal, and then increasing the speed of those to 40 miles an hour is quite standard. That's a pretty standard thing to a 40 mile an hour crossover turnout is not kind of beyond the wit of society. So Steve, I think these are tremendous examples.
It's good, I think, because it kind of shows that just chucking up 125 mile an hour board isn't the solution. Because also, I mean, what are you doing when you're coming towards a station? You're braking, but you're probably braking down from 60, 70, 100 miles an hour, and so braking down to 40 is obviously preferable. But if you're already doing 75 miles an hour, to increase and accelerate up to 125 versus 100 miles per hour is a significant energy and effort, whereas the flip case is easier. In terms of sort of smoother braking and the way that we approach it, it's a really good example. And things like where do you get a free run of 20 miles sometimes to go 125 miles an hour without a station call, without a freight train, without a local that's popping out in front of you, whereas every station in the country that hasn't had its S&C and outside its throats renewed is probably kicking around at some of these sort of speeds. The example I will use here is one that I know really well, which is going into Perth in Scotland. As you come out of the last mile into Perth is 15 miles an hour, but you can design an alignment through there that will get that up to 40 with no bother at all. Versus you could increase the speed from Perth to Stirling from 100 to 125 miles an hour, and all the cost of that
enormous.
is huge, because you've got a viaduct across rivers, you've got level crossings, which we'll probably come on to later. There's all sorts of things you need to sort out if you do that, whereas simply renewing the S&C in not quite like for like, but modern equivalent form, probably a better way of putting it, will save you the same amount of time.
And it's a case of increasing returns in the opposite sense to emission returns, because when you're in these lower speed areas, your things like your overlaps, your signal, all the distances between signals and things are shorter, which means that you can play around with things. Okay, it's always tight in a constrained site, but you're not talking about huge knock on because the distances are smaller. You can play around with things a little bit. You've got a bit more breathing room. And
the design constraints are the things that are interesting. Like, so plain line 125 mile an hour design, I could practically teach anyone to do that in a day, right? That's not why a signal engineer gets paid to do their job. It's thinking about complicated issues in station throats like this. This is where the money is earned, basically. So for me, looking at these throats and looking at how they're laid out and looking at how they are signaled, more importantly, will release a lot more speed. And I think if you look at something like Glasgow to Aberdeen, is the solution to increase the speed there? Probably not, but there's probably ways of grabbing at speed there that exist where there's currently restrictions on the existing speed that will garner as much time returned as a simple speed increase on the bits that are already fast.
Like getting more stuff up to 90 along some of those routes is far more useful than suggesting that the line speed, which I probably should have put a slide in for nomenclature here actually. So and you might correct me on this, because in my head, line speed is the top speed that you can do on a line. So, for example, the line speed on the East Coast Main Line is 125 miles an hour. That doesn't mean that it's, at any given moment, it's always 125 miles an hour. And that's where you have permissible speed restrictions, PSRs, which are, as a result of all of these constraints we've talked about, which are less than the line speed. So 110, 100, 105, whatever it happens to be.
And there's also reasons you might use them for, you can, as we sort of said before about capacity issues, you might lower the line speed artificially because it releases capacity. It allows the signals to be closer together through big complicated stations. Is the classic. Something like Reading Station has got a slight speed restriction versus the rest of the Great Western Main Line because you need the capacity to get it through those. That station.
Yeah, so you introduce a PSR that actually brings that down, and So doing something like getting rid of a load of PSRs, or at least raising a load of PSRs along a given route, is more impactful than increasing the line speed from, say, 100 to 110 or something like that, particularly on these Scottish routes where there are a lot of constraints, lots of rural routes actually where you'd be beneficial of doing a road industry and cutting some of the corners, maybe tightening or slackening some curves to improve some of the getting rid of some of the lower speed restrictions and hopefully fixing those problems. But station areas are the key one, and that's one of the key things that's just happened at King's Cross, which, Steve, I'm sure you can tell us a bit about from what you've seen of it. But so all standard S&C units, all sort of kind of higher speeds, 25 mile an hour minimum speed turnouts, plus improving the speeds kind of through. So basically, the driver kind of sat on any of the platforms now can almost kind of they can basically go up to the top notch on the train and move away at pretty decent pace. Because by the time they're reaching the higher, the acceleration of the train is almost being matched to the kind of the available speed restriction at any given moment. So they can open the trains up far more than in the past, where they had to trickle along at trundle speed until they were clear of Gasworks Tunnel or whatever, or even Copenhagen Tunnel or whatever it was.
And that's King's Cross is a perfect example. For those in the north of England, the Liverpool Lime Street is the other classic example of that. The way that has been changed is exactly the same as what we've seen. What we're seeing at King's Cross, the 40 miles an hour allows you to sort the trains out higher speeds earlier into the right line, so the driver can drive with confidence into the platforms, into the buffer ends. They're naturally breaking down to a speed for the buffer ends based on their own rules. And if the driver can simply, as you say, when they're leaving, place the train into the maximum acceleration and essentially leave it to go, like that's the perfect situation in terms of capacity, because they're not having to artificially hold back the train. Particularly with an electric train, which can accelerate at some rate of knots.
And there are other kind of knock-ons to this, because we're talking about overall speed, kind of reducing journey times, if you like, or making trains, inverted commas, faster. But there are other secondary knock-on effects. So, for example, there are a lot of people who got very angry at the idea of King's Cross having one of its platforms taken out. One of the suburban platforms was taken out. But actually, the whole point is that you don't, because of this improvement in speed coming out of the station throat, you don't need that extra platform, and you're still gaining capacity. Actually, you lose capacity if you added the platform back in. By taking that platform out, you're actually getting trains out of the throat quicker, which means that you can get them in and out of the platforms more quickly, which means that you can fit more trains per hour onto those platforms.
I'm warming up the gong just as you speak, because this is a perfect example of it working as it should work. The railway is a system, and as we demonstrate here by increasing the speed through that throat, you release capacity that you previously didn't have. But obviously the knock-on effect means you lose a platform. But actually, because you now have that capacity, you don't need that platform anymore. So there's a whole load of coping stones you don't need to maintain anymore. That's a load of CIS, customer information systems, you don't need anymore.
It's a load of extra potential platform space. It's reduced platform trade interface risk because you've got fewer platforms to deal with. It's X, Y, Z. It's all these cascading benefits.
And you can see how you can easily write a 1,000-page report on this sort of stuff, and quite regularly, I'm sure I have. And then that no one other than other engineers that are interested to read normally.
So that I think is a really good example of the right thing to be doing to getting to improving, and in this case, as we say, not just improving journey times while sacrificing capacity, but actually improving journey times and improving capacity. Good,
absolutely.
Good
you get both here for not for free, because enough is free, but certainly you get the bonus there without reducing the capacity.